Hi there, Aaron Kopel, CEO Project Brilliant here. I help business leaders create agile organizations. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the relationship of time, cost, and scope as we try to deliver value in our organizations and how that's different in a traditional environment versus an agile environment. And of course, this will build on some concepts we've talked about before with our Stacy matrix and navigating uncertainty and complexity in the world. So as we think about the traditional approach here, the fixed variable thing we lock in is usually scope. So upfront, we determine what is it we're going to try to deliver, and then we derive an estimate of how long will that take, and then how much will it cost from there. And so this approach in the traditional environment, we usually call a plan-driven approach. And it's called plan-driven, of course, because we're figuring out what is it we're going to try to deliver first, and then we derive the cost and time from that. So plan-driven approach. And so this can be okay if things don't change. So we're locking in the scope that we're going to deliver. And as long as that doesn't change, this can be a good model where we can derive then the time and cost if we have flexibility here to be able to deliver that way. So as we think about it, though, if we're in a complex environment, remember back to our Stacy matrix from some previous videos, we're in a complex environment where things are changing, and it's oftentimes very difficult to know all this stuff up front with a lot of certainty. And so the Agile approach tries to account for that differently. And so instead of fixing scope and then deriving time and cost, what we do is go the exact opposite. So in an Agile approach, what we're going to do is say, when do you want it? Let's set a date out there. So let's set the time as the first fixed variable. So let's set a delivery date, and let's say, I don't know, June 1st. And so we've got now a delivery date. And what we can do if we're using an Agile approach, especially if we're using Scrum, is that we have a fixed cost essentially, because we should have dedicated teams that we're essentially paying salaries, benefits, overhead. We can do the math and figure out between now and June 1st, how much will we have to pay to get to this date. And so we're not allocating funding to a project, we're allocating funding to teams. So the group that will actually work on this thing. And so that becomes a fairly fixed variable then. So the time and cost then, the ones that we really usually care about as leaders and managers are the ones like time and cost. And so we want to deliver by a certain date and or for a certain cost. So we set those variables out as fixed. And then what's left to flex, of course, then is the other variable, which is scope. And the question that's often asked is, well, why is that okay? Well, it's not that we have no idea what's going to be delivered. That's a common misunderstanding here. And so we do have an idea, right? We have a scope. And so if our team's been together, we have a track record and things like that. We have some predictability about the pace of delivery. Now it's a matter of what's the most important stuff to deliver. We might have a giant laundry list of things that we could deliver, but the important part is let's deliver the most value. And we don't know that up front, but we're going to discover it as we go. And so the way this works is then we create a backlog. And so we have a list of things that we think are important, and we're continually updating that list. And so as something new comes up, we just simply add it to the list. But of course, if you add something to the list, that might make something at the bottom fall down. But as long as we all agree that this new thing is the most important and the thing that's going to fall at the bottom is the least important, then things work out pretty well because we're constantly delivering the most valuable stuff. And so as we get to this end date, we may not finish everything, but we'll finish the most important things. And that's kind of the point here of Agile, is because we're discovering things as we go. Nothing is completely nailed down up front. And so this kind of approach here, the Agile approach, as compared to the traditional approach, where we have a plan-driven approach, the Agile approach is what we call a value-driven approach. We're trying to get the most value out of the situation where we have a fixed date and fixed cost to make sure we deliver the most important stuff early and then continue to reprioritize, reevaluate as we go. That's the idea. So hopefully that's a helpful concept for you. Of course, to learn more, go to projectbrilliant.com, and I look forward to seeing you for some future videos. Thanks, everyone.